Mm. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's A Month of Service presentation of HOA foreclosures. My name is Nia Murray. I am the programs coordinator for Neighborhood Recovery Community Development Corporation, and we are one of the partners in the A Month of Service collaboration. Also included is the City of Houston's Department of Neighborhoods, and joining us today is Ms. Myra Hippolyte. Also, our presenting partner with Lone Star Legal Aid is Mr. Amir Brafui, who's going to be providing you all with the information about HOA foreclosures. Also included in the in the partnership is Earl Carl Institute, Houston Volunteer Lawyers, Harris Central Appraisal District, Harris County Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and the Houston Bar Association. So for any of the workshops that you all see a course number, attorneys have the opportunity to receive free CLE credits on behalf of the Houston Bar Association, who sponsors these courses. So with that being said, for just an FYI, for those that are not aware, A Month of Service is a collaboration of these 8 different organizations. We all come together on a monthly basis and offer a variety of workshops, presentations, information, resources, however you'd like to call it, in relation to asset protection, asset building, and maintaining of generational wealth, and as well as community empowerment. So included in that is the foreclosure series that Lone Star Legal Aid does on the partnerships we have, whether it's tax foreclosures or reverse mortgage foreclosures or regular mortgage foreclosures, HOA foreclosures. They are going to be presenting that information. But this month, we're here to talk about the HOA foreclosures. We used to kind of encompass just foreclosures as just kind of a generic, but there's so many different layers to foreclosures. It's too much information to get into real detail about the different foreclosures. So we've decided to now break the foreclosure up. So every month is going to be a different aspect of foreclosure. Then we'll go back and repeat, the series. So with that being said, information that is presented here today is for informational purposes only. It's not to be considered legal advice. However, we do encourage you to reach out to our legal service partners like Lone Star Legal Aid if you find yourselves in need of any civil legal assistance. And Mr. Rafui is going to go over and tell you about all the other services that Lone Star does offer at no charge for those that qualify. So in addition to that, I just want you all to know that we are recording this session, and the session will be emailed to everyone that has registered here today, or you can also watch from our Facebook page that we are streaming live on at Amos Houston TX. So when you ask your questions, we are encouraging you to ask whatever questions that is that you'd like to ask. However, we want to try to protect your privacy as much as we possibly can. So make sure that you don't give any personal detail information about, where you live and so on and so forth, for everybody to have access to that information. So we don't want that information kind of getting out there for everybody. With that being said, I'll go over some other upcoming workshops that we've got at the end of the presentation. We want to welcome you all again and say thank you for coming back and continuing to support A Month of Service. If you're new, thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you all find the information here to be beneficial and can be of service to you. So we're going to go ahead and introduce our partners, and we will move right on into our presentation. So Ms. Myra.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Ms. Nia. Thank you, Mr. Amir. My name is Myra Hippolyte, and I'm with the City of Houston Department of Neighborhoods. On behalf of Mayor Sylvester Turner and Director Francis, we want to welcome you for taking time out of your busy schedule and welcome you to the Month of Service program. Today, I am at the workforce job fair in the A-Leaf community. So I will make it short and easy, but I'd like to say that, guys, if you're looking for a job, the City of Houston has a big job fair on May the 3rd. It starts at 9 a.m. at the George R. Brown Community Center. So make sure you take the time out of your busy schedule. But before you go there, make sure you upload your resume at the City of Houston Careers website, because they're not accepting resumes online, in person. So everything you have to apply with the City of Houston Careers website. So don't forget, May 3rd at 9 a.m. at George Ards Community Center. It's a City of Houston job fair. They are interviewing on the spot. And some position I heard that they are hiring on the spot. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And I got to get back to work. Stay safe.
All right, Amir, would you like to go ahead?
Sure thing. Thank you all for having me. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. I hope everyone can hear me. All right. If you can't, please let me know.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can hear you loud and clear.
Great. I heard a great joke the other day that Zoom meetings are like the modern day seance where you're all gathered around a Ouija board saying, hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me from the other side? So here I am. I hope we've made it to the other side. I think I'm sharing the correct screen. Are y'all able to see my slides that say Homeowners Association?
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you all, Nia and Myra, for that great introduction. My name is Amir Bafroui. I'm an attorney with Lone Star Legal Aid here in Houston. And I'm here to talk to you all about homeowners associations. Specifically, we're going to talk about HOA foreclosures, and you'll hear me jump back and forth between homeowners association and the acronym HOA. I think a lot of people understand what HOA means, but I'm going to take you on a journey to get to what looks like an HOA-led foreclosure. What do HOAs do? How do they operate? Do they really have the authority to take my home? The answer more often than not is yes. Now, before we get there, there's a few other things that I'd like to share with y'all. First off, today's presentation is going to be legal information, not legal advice. The distinction being, I'm telling you as a licensed attorney in the state of Texas who's been practicing for almost 11 years, this is trusted, verified information. But I'm not going to be able to go into detail about your specific situation. That's legal advice. You know, I have a house on such and such street. The HOA is such and such. Please tell me what to do. That's legal advice. I cannot provide that. There are ethical rules that prohibit me from doing that. Plus, my law firm would get upset at me if I were to do that via Zoom. So today's presentation is just legal information, but it's going to be good information that you can trust. And I hope that you share with your friends if any friends or family are dealing with an HOA issue. So our agenda today is, first, I'm going to talk to you briefly about Lone Star Legal Aid. I'm going to introduce you to the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund and explain how that works with HOAs. And then we're going to do a deep dive on homeowner associations, HOAs. And then we'll finish with a little bit more detailed information about the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund, apply what we've learned about HOAs, and then tie it in with the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund to show how it is a once in a generation option to help people really resolve financial disputes with their homeowners associations. So as I mentioned before, I work with Lone Star Legal Aid. We are a civil legal law firm. That means we help people with their civil law issues. What does that mean? I'll describe it a little bit more in detail, but I don't want to bury the lead. If you're facing jail time or fines, we generally cannot help you. But, excuse me, if you have a legal issue, and I like to just rattle them off real quick, anything that has to do with your home, your car, your money, or your family, that's a civil legal issue. And generally, Lone Star Legal Aid can help you with that. Now, as I mentioned just a moment ago, we protect and advance the civil legal rights of low-income Texans. So in order to qualify for Lone Star Legal Aid to provide you with free legal services, aka talk to a lawyer or a paralegal for free, you have to meet certain qualifications that we'll go through in a moment. One thing I want people to know is that Lone Star Legal Aid is not just here in Houston. We actually serve 76 counties, 4 in Arkansas and 72 in Texas. We have 14 offices. Now, I'm going to detail where those offices are on a later slide. But the main thing is we're in the greater Houston area and we're in East Texas, all the way up to the Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana border. So what do our clients generally look like? Well, we help people of all, backgrounds, children, veterans, members of minority groups, women, men, Anyone who has a legal issue who reaches out to Lone Star Legal Aid, as long as they're eligible, we provide them with legal services. So these could be your friends, your families, your neighbors. If you've never heard of Lone Star Legal Aid, welcome. I'd love for you to share this information with your friends and family, because there's almost 30 million Texans in our great state, and legal aid exists in every county. Lone Star Legal Aid has its third of the state that we help. There's 2 other legal aids that I'll describe in a moment that help the other 2/3. But the point here being is legal aid exists to help people who might not be able to afford a lawyer get equal access to justice, no matter what your background is. So as I just mentioned there, our mission is to ensure equal access to justice. So how much you make should not determine whether or not you are treated equally before a judge or a jury or in the eyes of the law. So in terms of eligibility, our organization, Lone Star Legal Aid, is funded by the state and federal government to provide free legal services to low-income Texans. Now, low income can vary depending on what organization or what need you have. So I encourage anyone who's interested or potentially has a legal issue to contact us within 10 to 15 minutes. You can contact us online, or you can contact us on the phone. And once you're speaking with one of our staff within 10 to 15 minutes, we can let you know if you're eligible or not. Now, in terms of the types of law that we cover, I'm going to read these off the slide, but then I'm going to boil them down to simple plain English. We help people with consumer law issues, employment law issues, family law issues, healthcare, housing, juvenile justice issues, problems in their neighborhood, public education issues, and financial assistance and public benefits. What does that mean? Financial assistance and public benefits would be like food stamps, Social Security issues. Sometimes people have issues with the IRS we can help with. Maybe you've heard about, some of the neighborhood dumping problems here in the greater Houston area. Lone Star Legal Aid worked with a number of community groups to get the Department of Justice to come in to force this, the city of Houston to actually honor its agreements to those neighborhoods. And when I talk about consumer and employment law and family law, that's where I really want you to jump back to the house, car, money, family. Those are, if you remember nothing else, it's Lone Star Legal Aid can help you with your home, your car, your money, and your family, any legal issues related to those. We also have very specific special projects. I manage the foreclosure prevention project. We do exactly what the name says it does. Any one of our clients that we work with, we help work to see if we can prevent the foreclosure of their home, your biggest asset. And that's what we're going to do a deeper dive on today, is how homeowners associations threaten some people's biggest asset or biggest wealth accumulator, which is their home. Now, how do you ask for help? How do you contact Lone Star Legal Aid? Well, I encourage every one of you all to visit our website. If you're on Zoom, that means you know how to use the internet. The website is www.lonestarlegal.org. There, right in the middle of the homepage, you'll be able to apply online, submit some information, and then be connected with one of our paralegals and intake staff to see if you're eligible, and then get connected with an attorney. If you prefer to do things by phone, our website lists our phone number, but it's also here on this slide, which is 1-800-733-8394. And we have a local 713 number, but because we serve the greater East Texas area, I encourage everyone to use our 1-800 number so that you can contact one of our staff and apply for services if you're interested, if you think you have a legal issue that you need help with. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have 14 offices. I want to show you where those are. The first 8 of the 14 show that we're in Beaumont. We're also in Belton, which is a city between Waco and Austin, near where Fort Hood, the military base, is located. We're also in Bryan, near the College Station area. We have an office in Clute, which is just around Lake Jackson, south of the greater Houston area. We're in Conroe, north of the Houston and Woodlands area. We're also on Galveston Island. Our downtown Houston office is our headquarters. We're also in East Texas in Longview, in Nacogdoches, in Paris, Texas, which exists which is a real city. It really exists between Texarkana and Dallas. We're also in Texarkana, right there on the Texas-Arkansas border. We're in Tyler. We're in Richmond, down here in Fort Bend County near Sugar Land, and we're also in Waco. So those are our 14 offices, and that shows that Lone Star Legal Aid is not just a Houston thing. If you have friends or family in parts of Central Texas, or you live in East Texas and you need legal services, we have an office that serves that area. If you have friends or family who live in a different part of Texas, the Northern Panhandle and Dallas area of Texas is served by Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. I'm going to repeat that. Legal Aid of Northwest Texas serves the northern portion of the state, the Panhandle and the Dallas Metroplex. If you live in Austin, San Antonio, El Paso, all the way down to the valley near the Mexican border, that area of Texas is served by Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. That's TRLA. They have just as many offices as we do. Excuse me. So if you live in the southern and western portions of Texas, that area of Texas is served by Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. So if you or friends or family or acquaintances have legal issues, know that every single county in the state of Texas is covered by a legal aid. Lone Star Legal Aid has East Texas and the greater Houston area. The northern portion of Texas, the Panhandle and the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is served by Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. And far South Texas, far West Texas, and parts of Central Texas are served by Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. Legal aid exists, again, across the state to be able to help people get equal access to justice, to ensure that income does not prevent you from being able to access your rights. Now, finally, if you prefer to get your information from social media, Lone Star Legal Aid is there. We regularly update our followers on changes to the law, new things that people should be aware of and how it impacts their rights on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I encourage you to give us a follow. You can check out our website to see if you like what you see. And if you do, check us out on social media as well. So let's get to the law, shall we? The first thing I want to introduce y'all to is the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund, or TX-HAF, or Texas HAF, you might hear me say. So what is Texas HAF? This is a program that went live just a little over a year ago, March of 2022. It was part of the American Rescue Plan Act, which many of y'all may recall was the 2021 COVID relief package that was passed by the Biden administration and Congress at that time. As part of that, they set aside, I can't remember exactly how much money, but a large chunk of money to help homeowners who had been impacted by the effects of COVID-19. This doesn't, and I want to clarify this. If you've bought a mask, you've been impacted by COVID-19. If you lost your job or had hours cut, you've been impacted by COVID-19. This program is not for people who have had the disease of COVID and they own their home. That's not the link you have to make. I would argue that we've all been impacted by COVID-19. That's probably why you're joining me on Zoom. So the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund was about $700 million that was set aside to help people get current on their mortgages, their property taxes, homeowners insurance, HOA debt, which is why we're talking about it today, and utility bills. So the application portal opened up in March of 2022. You must meet certain income eligibility and other requirements. Those other requirements be you were impacted by COVID-19 and you're facing some issue with retaining your home because there's some debt that's tied to your home that you can't pay. And you can get up to $65,000 to bring you current on your mortgage. Or if you're just behind on taxes or your HOAs, your HOA debt, you can get up to $25,000 to bring you current. I've been practicing law for 10 years, a little over 10 years. I've never seen a program like this. This is a generational investment to make sure that people who have been impacted by COVID-19 and own their home have resources there to help get them a fresh start. So I wanted to introduce you to that program because it's going to bleed into understanding homeowners associations and the role that they play in home ownership. So You're going to hear me use a number of acronyms today. POA, that's Property Owners Association. HOA, I've already mentioned that. That's Homeowners Association. COA, that's Condo Owner Association. These are all basically the same thing. There's a little bit of difference in how they're regulated by Texas law, but my presentation here today is going to cover all of that to make sure that if you own a home like I do, I'm out in Katy, I'm in a traditional, you drive out to the suburbs, all the houses look the same, that kind of HOA. But if you live on the southwest side of Houston, maybe right off of 59 in Bissonnette, you might own a condo, and you might you live in a building that looks like an apartment complex, but you own your little square. Those generally have Condo Owners Association, and there's rights and regulations for homeowners and regulations to constrain what those associations do. We need to talk about them. So HOAs are contractually created organizations. They don't just exist out of thin air. At some point, either a developer, the person who built the neighborhood or built the condo tower or built the condo complex, decided it wanted an HOA to regulate and control how things were done in that neighborhood or complex. And so those rights have been written down in a contract, and every homeowner, whether you own a condo or a house, has the right to access that document. Now, whether it makes sense to you or not, we're going to talk about it, because generally these things are written in lawyer language, aka legalese. So before we get there, let's talk about the important documents. A homeowners association, whether it's for a condo or a traditional subdivision out in the suburbs, is a nonprofit corporation. Corporations are created through what are called articles of incorporation. It's just a series of, it's just paperwork that says this corporation exists and this is what it's going to do. The powers that the corporation has, or the HOA has, are listed in what are called the declarations of covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Sometimes these are referred to as the declarations or the covenants or the CC&Rs. It's all different words talking about the same thing. It's the contract between the HOA as a corporation and you as the homeowner. And that contract goes both ways. The HOA agrees to do certain things, and the homeowner agrees to do certain things. It's not the 10 commandments handed down from Mount Sinai by Moses, meaning a contract can be interpreted by man to be a little bit different, and people are going to have different interpretations. So we're going to talk about that today. Additionally, HOAs have a set of bylaws. Most of them do, which bylaws are basically what tells the HOA how to run its business. And then there are rules and regulations. So if you live in a subdivision or maybe in a condo complex that has a pool or a tennis court, there's going to be rules that say when the pool is open or when the lights are on at the tennis court. The HOA sets those rules. Now, who controls the HOA? The association, the HOA, is controlled by a board of directors. Well, who are these board of directors? They're your neighbors. They're elected. They're not elected in like a public election that is organized by the government, but it's a public election that's organized by the HOA for every homeowner to vote in. We're going to talk about how people get appointed to the board by the developer, so not elected. And then we're going to talk about how people get elected to the board. Now, this presentation started with me talking about HOA-led foreclosure, but now I'm taking you through the nitty-gritty, and you might be wondering why. Well, follow along with me here, because I just told you this is where these are the people who run the HOA. Understanding the people who run the HOA will help you understand their motivation. Once they're motivated, you need to know what powers they have. Well, their powers are not absolute. They're not handed down by God or whatever power you might believe in. They're written down in a contract that you and me can read. And people can have different interpretations about what the words on the paper mean. And that's why it's important that y'all know that your neighbors are on the board. They have certain rules that they have to follow. And in really bad situations, that can lead to foreclosure. So let's walk through this in a little bit more detail. The declarations of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, I'm just going to call these the declarations. This is the contract that creates the Property Owners Association, or the HOA. The property developer, so whoever flattened all the land, built all the roads, built all the houses, or built the condo complex, created the corporation. And the first thing the corporation did was create the declarations. And the great thing about the declarations is all of them have to be recorded in the deed records. So what does that mean? When you buy your house, you were given a piece of paper called a deed. If you lose that deed, that does not mean you no longer own your house. A copy of that has been recorded with the county clerk for the county you live in. So I live in a part of Katy that's in Fort Bend County. So I would go down to the Fort Bend County clerk, but I used to live in the city of Houston, which was in Harris County. If I needed my deed for that house, I would go down to the Harris County clerk. These are available online for most counties, but there are also hard copies that are kept in the county seat, the county clerk's office. So the same thing applies to the declarations. If your HOA is well run, they'll give you one. They'll probably have it available publicly online through their website. If they're giving you the runaround, well, guess what? You can access it generally for free online, or go and grab a copy of it from the county clerk's website. You can see what the declarations say and then use that to understand what your rights and the responsibilities of the HOA are. So let's go through what a typical HOA declaration or CC&Rs look like. This is an old one from the 70s, but most HOAs were created in the 50s and 60s and 70s. They're now very, very popular. I'm going to give you guys some percentages, but I want to show you how difficult these documents are to read. So bear with me one moment while this document pulls up. Are y'all able to see this PDF? And just somebody give me a shout.
Yes.
All right. So this document, you might be able to see it. It might be very small on whatever screen you're examining. It was recorded on March 2nd, 1978. But I pulled it from the deed records in August of 2016. Now, that was because it was part of a lawsuit that I was involved in. But I made this part of my presentation because I wanted y'all to see that this is pretty typical for what a set of declarations looks like. The first thing I want to point out, it's 23 pages long. And most of this, you got the cover sheet. Once you get to the second page, it's single spaced. That's a whole lot of words and that are written kind of in blurry. The copy isn't the best, and they're using whereas and therefore and language we just don't really use in common English. And so it might be a little intimidating, but I encourage y'all to stick with me because I'm going to give you some highlights that I would look at for any declaration. So the first thing is you want to know what the definitions are. Well, Article 1 says definitions, and it tells you what the HOA is, so the name of the HOA. It tells you what properties are included in the HOA. So maybe your neighborhood is or is not. And then it defines what owners are, and that goes into like who can vote and who can't for board members and other business of the HOA. Then there's generally definitions on other powers that the HOA has. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. Jumping down, the next thing I would look for in any set of declarations that I'm reviewing is the language that gives them the right to take my house. So that is going to be, bear with me one second. The covenants for maintenance assessments. So most people, if you have a homeowners association, you understand that you have to pay the HOA something either monthly or yearly. So most people who live in condos pay HOA or condo association assessments every month. And that money goes to maintaining the roof of the complex or the tower if you live in a condo tower, paying for the foundation, maybe paying for on-site maintenance. Maybe you think you have a poorly run condo association and you don't know where the money's going. I've heard that story before, and I'm not saying there's no truth to it. I just don't want to get into the weeds on that. If you live in a traditional subdivision that has a homeowners association, you probably are like me and pay once a year. My HOA is $750 a year. They pay to maintain the trails, the pool, the tennis courts, a couple of other things that escape my mind. But what happens if you don't pay? So if you don't pay, what this covenant for maintenance assessments, and it could be written differently, it could be called promise to pay, annual dues. But the gist of it is you promise to pay the HOA, whether monthly or annually, a certain amount of money. And if you don't, Section 1 says they have a lien on your home. What is a lien? A lien is legal speak for the right to foreclose on your home to collect the money that you should have paid. So I want you to think of foreclosure as a big, scary word. It's one that any homeowner should be wary of. But what foreclosure means is it's an extraordinary form of debt collection, right? They're not calling you or sending you letters and saying you got to pay this bill. They're saying, if you don't pay, we're going to take your house. We're going to sell your house. And we're going to use the money we got from the sale to pay the bill that we say you owe. And that's what HOAs can do. Now, Section 2 here says what they use the assessments for, and generally it's pretty broadly worded. So again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but those are the two things I wanted you to pay attention to, right? We have a 23-page document here, single spaced, a lot of big words that I might not be familiar with if you're not a lawyer. But I only direct you to the two things. Look at the definitions and look at the language that says what you got to pay and what happens if you don't pay. So I want to share that information with you, and I want you to share it with your friends and family by sharing this video and what have you, to empower people. Because I don't know about y'all, but my mom said knowledge is power, and that's why I'm doing this presentation. I don't think a single person should lose their home to an HOA because they didn't know any better. There's a lot of myths out there about what HOAs can and cannot do. I'm here to dispel them. I'm here to remove the fog, to let you know what they actually have the power to do. And what you can see right here in plain black and white is most HOAs have the power to foreclose on your home if you don't pay your bill to the HOA. So moving on. So I mentioned the first set of powers that an HOA has, that actually like the foundational set of powers that they have is that contract called the declaration. We just went through that. The second set of rules that the HOA has to follow is its bylaws. So think of these as rules the HOA sets for itself. Bylaws are typically, we're going to have at least one meeting a year. By all corporations in Texas have to have at least one meeting a year. Some HOAs have quarterly meetings. Sometimes they meet monthly. Excuse me. The bylaws are where you're going to find out what the rules for the HOA are. You'll also find rules for how meetings are going to be handled, right? Meetings are always going to be on the third Monday at 6 o'clock at a location that's published at least 10 days in advance. Why is that important? Because as a homeowner who's impacted by the HOA, you need to know when the people who control the HOA, the board, are meeting so that you can show up. Because the bylaws and the declarations are going to make it clear that you have the right as a homeowner, just by buying into that neighborhood and agreeing to be bound by the HOA's rules, you have the right to appear at those meetings and talk about whatever problems or concerns that you might have. Now, the difference with the bylaws is these are generally not recorded in the deed record. So I took y'all through the whole process of getting the declarations. You can pull them from any county's deed records. If you're in Fort Bend County, Montgomery County, Galveston County, what have you, there's an HOA, their declarations are recorded and publicly available. Bylaws are not. This is a contract or a set of rules for a private corporation. So only the homeowners who live in that subdivision or in that condo complex will have the right to demand it. So there's certain rights you're entitled to demand it under Texas law, but let's think about it practically. Like, does anyone want to lawyer up for every little thing? No. Most well-run HOAs that I've dealt with, and remember, I'm a lawyer, I deal with problems. So even when an HOA is causing a problem, I can still find their bylaws because most of them put it on their website. Most of them maintain a website. If they don't have a website, they have a person responsible for it. And most of the time that person will provide it to you via email for free. So here's an example of the same HOA. I took you through their declarations, that 23-page document. I pulled it from their website. They called it CC&Rs. I just Googled the name of the HOA once my client told me what it was. They also put their bylaws on their website. I didn't have to enter a password or an email address to get this information. It's all publicly available. And I'd say 60-70% of the time, the website is just as good as this one. And this is what I would call the gold standard. Like, it was very easy for me to find what I needed rather than have to, put on my lawyer hat and say, come on, you got to give it to me, and force them to give me the information that I need. The final set of written guidance or guidelines that an HOA has, we've talked about the declarations, we've talked about the bylaws, are the community rules and regulations, right? These trails close at dusk, or the pool is only open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, or the tennis court is available by reservation at such and such website. That's an example of community rules and regulations. Another set of community rules and regulations would be, you have to talk to the HOA before you change your roof because the shingles have to match. Or if you want to put an awning in the backyard and your house backs up to the community lake, which is probably a detention pond, let's be real, then you need to talk to the HOA to get the color approved. That can show you how broad rules can be and how very specific they can be. And I'm not here to say HOAs are bad or not. Obviously, I live in a neighborhood with one. I've made my choice. I'm here to empower you to understand how they impact homeowners who live in these neighborhoods or condo complexes. Maybe it's you, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's your family. So who makes up the HOA board? We talked about this briefly earlier, but I wanted to illustrate it. They don't all come wearing blouses and suits, all right? It's your friends, it's your neighbors. These are people who are generally community minded because they're volunteers. I've not met an HOA that paid its board. It's a nonprofit designed to use the money that it gets to pull all that money right back into the community. Sometimes they might pay for travel expenses and maybe cater lunch once in a while, but they're not getting paid. This is something that either if they're retired, they're doing with their free time, or if they're working, they're doing after work. These are your neighbors down the street, across the neighborhood, maybe on the next floor over if you live in a condo complex. Now, HOA boards in brand new neighborhoods, like if you live in a part of the greater Houston area or just a different county where a brand new neighborhood's getting built, the developer appoints the HOA board. And the reason is as the developers clearing the land and putting the roads in and building the houses, there ain't nobody there to vote. There's nobody there to vote to appoint, to elect people to the HOA board. So the developers created the HOA. The HOA has the power from the declarations, but who's going to run it? Because there's no homeowners either in that brand new condo tower or in that brand new subdivision. Well, the developer has the right to appoint it. And what more often than not happens is in the declarations, again, that initial foundational contract, it says once 50 to 60% of the homes in the subdivision or in the condo are bought, then those homeowners will hold an election to elect people to the board. Again, it goes back to something I think as Americans we all take for granted, but representation. Once a critical mass, and generally it's the majority of the homes are filled by homeowners, those people have the right to elect a board that represents them rather than have the appointed board members controlling the HOA. As I mentioned before, and I hope this picture illustrates, board members are your neighbors. It's important to keep that in mind because, I'm friendly with my neighbors, but they're not my best friend, but they're not my worst enemy. Some neighbors can be great, but most neighbors have different ways of living than we do, right? We all live in the same neighborhood. We're all a little bit different. We're all a little bit the same. I think Sesame Street taught me that, but it's important to remember that with your HOA board, when things can get very contentious very quickly because of the way HOAs are organized, but it's important to remember that who's at the ultimate controls are your neighbors, and it might be important to keep that in mind, or it is important to keep that in mind when you're trying to relate to them to try and resolve a problem, right? Like, I live down the street. What are you upset about my azaleas for? Or why are you mad that I painted my house pink? Or do you really want to take my house? My wife and kids live here. Is there something we can get worked out? That's appealing to the, not looking at the business side, right? Like the quote, it's just business. It's we're people, so please let's humanize this. So again, I share that to give you all that perspective that HOAs are not these robotic machines that don't have people that the people are asleep at the wheel. They're made up of volunteer neighbors who care about their community. So what does an HOA board do? Well, I'm going to just read the first bullet point because I just want to illustrate it. The HOA board is allowed to do whatever it does, whatever it's allowed to do under state law, whatever the declarations say it can do, and whatever the HOA bylaws say it can do, which is pretty broad, which is again why you want to read the declarations, or at least those two sections of the declarations, and you want to be familiar with the bylaws so you know what rules everybody has to follow. As I mentioned earlier, Texas law dictates the bare minimum that an HOA board has to do is hold one meeting a year to give homeowners the opportunity to speak with the board and know what the board is doing. HOA boards can hold meetings more often, but they're required to have at least one a year. Now, let's talk about the complications. As a lawyer, it's my belief that most legal issues stem from miscommunication. And with HOAs, miscommunication is rampant. And the reason is, in my opinion, because of how they're structured. So I already took you guys through how HOAs get set up. The board members are elected. It's hunky-dory, it's their neighbors. But I live in a neighborhood that's got 500 houses, and each one of us is paying $750 a year. That's a lot of money for 5 elected volunteers to manage. So my HOA does what a vast majority of all HOAs do, which is hire a professional management company to run the books, answer the phone, be the public-facing portal website, maintain the website, but be the public face of the HOA. Now, what you're doing there is you're starting with the board of directors, and you're layering on a group of professionals who probably don't live in your neighborhood, who aren't as familiar with the intricacies of what your neighborhood looks like, and so on and so forth. That creates a disconnect. In my mind, disconnects create miscommunication. So it's important that you know that the management company is not the HOA. They are hired by the HOA. The HOA board is still made up of elected members. So sometimes management companies can get in the way. And that's because they're used to processing things a certain way. And that's why the HOA board meetings are so important, because it's a way for homeowners to cut through and speak directly to the board to try and get their problem resolved. But most HOA management companies are probably going to be the people or the companies sending you letters, picking up the phone when you call, maintaining the website, or responding to your emails. They're going to be your first point of contact. Just know that's not the end of the road. So I just took you through how HOAs are organized, how they're most of them are professionally managed. Now, if you already own your home and maybe you live in a neighborhood that didn't have an HOA, my first house 5 years ago, I lived in a neighborhood in Houston. It was built in the 50s, didn't have an HOA. When I moved out to Katy, we got an HOA. More HOAs are coming. Now, this data is from the 2021 census. This shows that the number of new family houses that were completed, and this just shows data going from 2009 to 2019. Progressively, more and more and more of them are being built in an HOA. And I'll give you an example because I know these numbers are small on whatever screen you're looking at. In 2009, 46% of houses nationwide were built and set in neighborhoods that did not have an HOA. But just 10 years later, in 2019, 62% I misspoke. 46% of houses in 2009 were built in neighborhoods that did have an HOA. And then 10 years later, that number had jumped to 62% in 2019. So HOAs are becoming a popular form of maintaining home value, and developers care about that. Neighbors care about that. And so they're becoming more and more prevalent throughout the United States. This data shows that when a new house is sold, so not built, so like the previous slide was talking about houses that are built in a new neighborhood, but when they're sold, in 2009, 62% of houses that were sold were in neighborhoods with an HOA. In 2019, that number had jumped all the way up to 75%. So 3 out of 4 houses sold in 2019 were in a neighborhood with an HOA. So we understand the basics, we understand how they work, we know how management companies can be involved. Now we know that they are more than the majority and almost a super majority of most houses sold. And that was as of data from 4 years ago. I'm sure the number is even higher now. So let's talk about common issues with HOAs. Now that we have some foundational, fundamental information about them, how can things go sideways with the homeowners association? What does that look like? So last year, almost a year ago, there's this headline from the Houston Chronicle: Cypress couple sued for $250,000 by their homeowners association for feeding the ducks. Now they could lose their home. I can tell you, I found a very similar article from Pearland, just south of Houston. So apparently, don't feed the ducks in your neighborhood. I've told my neighbors, we got ducks, don't feed them. They're cute, but don't feed them. You don't want to get sideways with your homeowners association. Other general, and I provided that first one as kind of a bit of comedic relief, but you can see just from that first headline how quickly just something as innocent as feeding the ducks can turn into something that violates the HOA's rules and leads to $250,000 claimed that you owe, and then the threat of you losing your home. Other more general categories of issues with HOAs is general dysfunction and mismanagement of the HOA. So I see this more often in condo owner associations, where maybe there isn't a professional management company involved. So you have your elected volunteer boards who might be in over their heads, and their money's coming in, but they're not spending it to fix the foundation of the building or keep up with the roof or maintain the pipes. And homeowners get upset. Debt collection activity. So this goes back to the homeowners association itself, or more often than not, the management company it hires, or sometimes the lawyers that the HOA hire, sending out very scary letters to homeowners saying, you owe this many thousands of dollars, and you're wondering, how did my $750 a year bill jump up to $3,000? That's debt collection. And then if you get involved in either of those situations where you're sideways with your HOA and your homeowners association saying it's my way or the highway, that can lead to some very coercive or one-sided settlement negotiations. You just want the problem to go away because this is your home. This is where you lay your head at night. This is where your family comes at the end of the day, whether it's husband, wife, partner, kids, dog, and you just don't want that kind of stress with your home. And that kind of one-sided negotiation can be very, very coercive. Other issues are that once things start to go wrong between you and your homeowners association, the paperwork can really pile up and can be very, very overwhelming. I'll tell you a quick story. Some of the most homeowner-friendly HOA protection laws in Texas were passed after a woman, an elderly woman, her husband had passed away. She was living on her own. She forgot to pay her HOA for 1 year. They started sending her letters over and over and over again. She lived in North Houston. She got overwhelmed by the amount of letters. She just started to put them in the bad news drawer, right? Who at home doesn't have like a pile of paperwork? Yeah, I need to look at that mail, but I don't. And that led to her losing her home over, I think, roughly $3,000. And I think it was a $200,000 house. So the paperwork and the deadlines in that paperwork can pile up and be very, very overwhelming. And then the expenses can increase very quickly. So I mentioned earlier, my annual HOA assessment's $750. But if a management company, if the management company starts tacking on interest and late fees every month, I've seen, late fees as low as $5, as high as 20, monthly that can build. And then as soon as the homeowners association hires a lawyer, the bill sometimes doubles. Lawyers' time is not cheap, and the lawyer is charging the HOA, and the HOA is just letting that bill flow through to your account. So if you're ever in a situation where you're in a dispute with your homeowners association, it's very important to stay on top of your paperwork, pay attention to the numbers, pay attention to the deadlines, and reach out for help whenever you think you need it. As I mentioned briefly before, like homeowners associations impact the place where we lay our head at night. And so as my slide says on the left side, HOAs can create bad blood, right? If someone comes from my house, it's going to not, I'm not going to feel great about it, right? I might not react the most logically or objectively to try and resolve it. Disputes with HOAs often turn nasty because they involve emotion. It involves a threat, again, potential threat to your home. It's natural to feel that strongly. What's important is to realize your limits, right? If you know, like I tell my kids, right? Take a deep breath, calm down. If you're finding that you're just not able to professionally deal with the situation, reach out for help. It could be a friend, it could be a family member talking to the HOA on your behalf. It could be reaching out to Lone Star Legal Aid, you know, seeing if we could reach out to the HOA on your behalf. The point there being, it's natural to have strong feelings and emotions. I can tell you 100% of my clients that I have helped in HOA disputes have had very, very strong emotions tied into it. And I don't judge any one of them for it, because I would feel the exact same way. And I think any one of us would as well. So the most common issue that homeowners have with their HOAs, despite all the stories and slides and headlines I just showed you, is falling behind on the payment of their assessments. And let me give you a very common example. I have a mortgage. My mortgage covers my taxes, my insurance, and then what I pay to the bank. It does not include what I pay to the HOA. And for me, I get a bill once a year from the HOA. So that could be very easy to ignore. If money's tight, maybe I only pay the HOA, but I don't pay the mortgage. You know, there's different ways that you can that you could fall behind on paying your HOA. If you live in a condo, the HOA bills you monthly. If you fall behind 1 month, the HOA could start tacking on additional fees, and then it's like you're trying to dig out of a hole that's very, very difficult to ever see the light from. So that's why the most common issue that I see for my clients is financial issues, trying to get caught up on whatever they might owe to their HOA. So let's talk about board abuse. I mentioned this briefly earlier, but a condo owners association on the southwest side of Houston was sued by a group of residents because they alleged that the elected board members were abusing their powers. Basically, the elected board members kept raising the assessments, the amount that they had to pay monthly, to try and force people to get out by selling or being foreclosed upon. Now, I'm not saying that's the truth. That's just what they alleged in their lawsuit. But that's an example of how a poorly run HOA, in my opinion, can make life very, very difficult for people who are not aware of what their rights are. And even when they try to push back, it can be very challenging because the amounts demanded, the amount that the HOA was demanding, can be very, very intimidating. Even if they're making up a number, it's still scary. Here's if you want to learn more about it, I encourage you to just Google this headline. This is a copy of the article from the Houston Chronicle. It's from 2019, so it's almost 4 years old. But Houston condo owners sued their HOA board after foreclosures, a big assessment, and other issues. And in their situation, state law did not give them a lot of options. I don't know how their situation resolved itself, but I encourage you to check this out to see a cautionary tale on how poorly run HOAs can make people's lives a living hell. There's no other way to put it. So let's talk about HOA-led foreclosures and evictions. This is, again, kind of the end of the line. We've talked about how HOAs are set up, how they're run, how management companies play a part of that, and what they're and some common forms of situations where homeowners and HOAs get crossways. Let's let's talk about what it looks like when the HOA starts to move for foreclosure. So as I mentioned with those, when we went through the declarations, your homeowners association more often than not has a lien against your home, and that lien is just a legal speak to saying it has the right to force the sale of your home without your permission to collect the money that it claims it is owed. That's what foreclosure means, forced sale to collect money. I emphasize this on multiple slides because a lot of people don't believe that a homeowners association can foreclose. As I mentioned before, it's hard for me to believe that I've been doing this for 10 years, but I look back and I can think of maybe 2 HOAs that did not have the right to foreclose. I've handled dozens of these, if not hundreds, if not over 100. And like I said, I've only seen it twice where the HOA does not have the right to foreclose. So what does foreclosure look like? So you may or may not know, most people think foreclosure means a judge is involved. So most of the time, no. If you don't pay your mortgage, and I'm kind of jumping around here, if you don't pay your mortgage company can follow a non-judicial foreclosure process. That means they don't need to get involved. They don't need to take you to court. They don't need a judge involved. They just need to send you a couple of letters by certified mail, and then they can schedule your house to be sold at a public auction on the first Tuesday of the month. Now, I know I'm speaking to a muted Zoom audience here. I'm going to ask a question and I'm going to answer it. Does anybody know what the first Tuesday in May is? It's next Tuesday. It's May the 2nd. If anyone with an HOA or a mortgage or anyone threatens you with foreclosure, if they mention we're going to sell your house on such and such date, if it's the first Tuesday of the month, that threat is probably real. So I wanted to emphasize that foreclosures can only happen 12 times a year, once a month, and it's on the first Tuesday of the month, no matter how the person got to the foreclosure process. So I just described the non-judicial foreclosure process. There is a judicial foreclosure process that most HOAs have to follow, but some do not. The non-judicial foreclosure process is more often than not followed by condo owner associations. They are allowed to foreclose on people without having to go to court. Like 80% of the time, there's a small minority that has to take you to court, but it's rare. And again, here, just like with a mortgage company, they have to send you a couple of notices by certified mail before they can schedule your house to be sold on the first Tuesday of the month. Now, what I want to emphasize is HOAs can do a lot of things, but by Texas law, they can only foreclose on your house if you owe maintenance assessments. So my annual bill of $750, I make sure I pay that. If you live in a condo and your assessments are $1, $2, $3, $4, even $700, I've seen that it's, a monthly bill as high as $700. Make sure you pay it. You might not be happy with what they're doing, but you have more rights when you pay and then fight rather than don't pay and then try to fight, because at that time you're fighting with 2 hands behind your back because the HOA is going to try to foreclose on you and make you homeless. And it's a lot harder to fight an HOA when you don't have a place to live. So a lot of people may know this. You hear the stories about like the HOA coming after you because you painted your house pink, or you haven't brought in the trash can, or you didn't cut the grass, or maybe there's a crack in the driveway. HOAs can't foreclose on you for that. They can fine you. They can say you owe us money because you didn't fix this. I got a couple that lives out in Galveston County that the HOA is coming after them for not cutting their palm trees fast enough, and then when they did cut them, not putting the palm trees, branches in the trash fast enough. But they cannot foreclose for those reasons. The palm trees will not lead to foreclosure. They will make an HOA might threaten it. They might insinuate it, but they cannot foreclose on you for those reasons. They can only foreclose on you in the state of Texas if you don't pay your assessments. So if you've got a problem with your HOA, and I know I'm repeating myself, pay your assessments, then fight. Don't try to withhold your money and say, I'm going to show them I'm not going to pay, and then I'm going to fight them, because it's just that much more difficult for you to do that. Now, HOAs foreclosed in different ways. On the left side of the slide, you see a picture of what I found when I Googled subdivision. This is what most people think about when they think about an HOA, a bunch of houses with their own yard separated by fences. They maybe all look the same. And then there's condo owners associations. A condo can be a tower, in downtown Houston or in the Galleria. More often than not, at least in our area, condos are just buildings that share walls. You know, it might have been a very common situation is you have apartment complexes that were built in the 60s and 70s. You had the oil bust in the 80s, and the apartment complexes sold off apartments as condos. And so now you live in something that looks like an apartment, but it's actually a condo. It shares walls with somebody else who owns their 4 walls and a roof. So if an HOA for a subdivision wants to foreclose to collect its assessments, it has to file a lawsuit. Well, first the HOA has to send you a letter saying, you got 30 days before we hire a lawyer, before the fees go up, or actually 45 days, the law just changed. You got 45 days before we hire a lawyer and the bill goes up to try and resolve this situation. You can ask for a payment plan. If you wait and the 45-day deadline goes by, more often than not, the HOA is going to hire a lawyer. More often than not, the bill is going to go up. And then more often than not, the law firm is going to help the HOA file a lawsuit against you to get a court order to allow it to foreclose and sell your house. Now, with condo owners associations, as I mentioned before, about 20% of them have to follow that same hire a lawyer, take you to court, get a court order to foreclose. But most of them, a vast majority of them, only have to send you a letter saying you haven't paid for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, however many months. You owe this much money. If you don't pay it, we're going to schedule your house for a foreclosure auction on the first Tuesday of the month. And we're going to sell your house to collect the money that you owe us. Or we're going to sell your condo to collect the money that you owe us. Now that's foreclosure. That's generally most people would think is the end of the line. But in Texas, you actually have the right to get your house back after your HOA, whether it's a condo or a subdivision HOA, sells your house. Now it's complicated because they can evict you and you could be made homeless, but still have the right to get your house back. So let me explain. If you are in a traditional subdivision and your HOA forces the sale of your home, they foreclose and sell your house, you have 180 days generally from the date of the sale. It's a few days after to get your house back, to pay the money from the foreclosure auction to get the deed to your house back in your name. That's called the right to redeem. If you live in a condo and you go through the same unfortunate process where your HOA forecloses on you and sells your house, you actually have 90 days from the date of the sale to get the deed to your condo back in your name. Now, in both of those situations, you have that, like the foreclosure sale happens, the clock starts ticking. You have the right to get your house as long as you're doing it within 90 or 180 days. But if the HOA bought your house, or if a third party bought your, the deed to your house, that third party or the HOA can actually evict you during that time frame. That does not give you another 90 days to stay for free and not pay anything and try and get your house back. It's very unfortunate. It can seem confusing. It's just the way the law is written right now, that HOAs or third-party buyers after foreclosures can actually evict you and make you homeless or force you to live somewhere else while you still have the right to redeem your house. Again, that's another myth I'm here to dispel, is that you can be evicted by your HOA if they foreclosed upon you as well. So maybe y'all have read about the eviction crisis that has not peaked. It's still pretty much roaring full bear in Harris County, but that was a big part of the early stages of the pandemic, and as I mentioned just a second ago, is still going on. A lot of people are being evicted. Most of them are tenants, people who rent rather than own. But the eviction process, if you're foreclosed upon, is the exact same as if you just are renting your home. So I want to walk you through it. Once your home is sold at a foreclosure auction, you are legally considered a tenant, even if you didn't have a lease. You're what's considered a tenant at sufferance. That's the lawyer way of saying you don't own this house, you're just staying here. In order to evict you, the new buyer, if it's the HOA or if it's a third party, has to serve you with a notice to vacate. What is that? It doesn't have to look any sort of way. It can just be a piece of paper. It can be printed out off a Word. It can be written down, and it has to be given to you or posted on the inside of your door, or handed to you, taped to the outside of your door in a certain type of envelope that says you have 3 days to get out of your home. And that can be very, very traumatizing for someone who just went through the foreclosure process. This is the place that they live. This is the place they thought they were going to live the rest of their life. Now being told that they have 3 days to get out. It could seem like a scam, especially because it doesn't have to look very official. But I guarantee you that if you've gone through the foreclosure process and then you're served with what's called a notice to vacate, telling you got 3 days to get out, more often than not, it is legitimate and you need to pay attention to it, and you need to be reaching out to a lawyer as soon as possible. Because if you don't get out after those 3 days, what happens next is the new owner of the house, whether it's your whether it's your HOA or a third party, will file a lawsuit against you in the local justice of the peace court called an eviction lawsuit. And they're essentially asking for this: Judge, I told them to get out. They don't own the house. I need a court order from you telling them to get out. And those lawsuits can move really quickly. On average, pre-pandemic, from the date that the lawsuit is filed to the date of trial is like 10 to 14 calendar days. Now that timeline has stretched out a few weeks because of the volume of evictions working their way through at least Harris County, but it's still quick. It's not months, it's weeks. So you could be given a notice to vacate on Monday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Thursday, the eviction lawsuit is filed, and within 2 to 4 weeks, you're in justice of the peace court hearing that you no longer have the right to stay in your home, that you no longer own. So if you lose in an eviction, if the new buyer gets a court order that says you have to be out, 5 days after your trial, the constables will, 6 days after your trial, the constables will serve you with what's called a writ of possession. This is a very official looking document. Sometimes it's neon green, but it's on an 8 by 11.5 or 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. If you're home, the constables will hand it to you. If you're not, they'll tape it to your door, and it'll say, "This is a writ of possession. We tried to come to your house. We knocked on your door at 2:08 p.m. on April the 27th. That's right now. We will be back in 24 hours. If you're not out, we're going to remove you from the property and we're going to put all of your stuff on the curb." I take a breath there because just saying that is traumatic. I've helped a number of people, dozens of people. I'm confident I've helped hundreds of people navigate evictions, whether it's post foreclosure or they were renting. No one wants the constable to be knocking on their door because that generally means it's the end of the line. I share that with you not to scare you. I share that with you to empower you so you know what your rights are. So you can share this with your friends and family so that we can get rid of another myth, which is HOAs have power, but it's not absolute. HOAs have the right to foreclose. There's certain ways that they have to foreclose. And if they foreclose, an eviction will follow. Not might follow, it will. It's always happened. So now that we've talked about how things can go sideways and go sideways very, very quickly and how bad they can look, what resources are available to help me as the homeowner or my friend or my neighbor resolve this dispute with their homeowners association? Well, I want to reintroduce you to my friend, the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund, because as I mentioned before, this is a generational investment to help people get the fresh start that they need. Maybe you fell behind on your HOAs because you lost work because you caught COVID-19, right? You live in a condo and you just weren't able to work. You're an hourly worker and you weren't able to work for 2 weeks because you were sick and you can't pay the $400 a month assessment, or you had to take 3 months off of work because the kids were at home because the schools were closed and you couldn't pay the annual assessment. The Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund exists to help people who've been impacted by COVID-19. As I mentioned before, it's my opinion, all of us have been, get that fresh financial start and not lose their home. So I'm just going to read to y'all the purpose of the program. It's to provide financial assistance to qualified Texas homeowners who have fallen behind on their mortgages and related expenses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Grants may cover mortgage payments, taxes, insurance, and HOA fees. Now, since I wrote this, they've added utilities as well, but mortgages, taxes, and HOA fees, those three types of debts can lead to foreclosure. So those are the ones that the Texas TX HAF was set up to prioritize. apologize, talking for an hour and 10 minutes, you get a little dry. As I shared with y'all earlier, the portal opened a year ago, and you might be thinking, well, the money's all gone. Like, I can tell you they got over 300 million left. So they started with just under 700 million to help people. And there's a big chunk of change still left to help people. Now, if you're behind on your mortgage, you can get up to $65,000 in assistance. If you're behind on just taxes or HOA, you can get up to $25,000. If you're behind on a combination of both, the limit is 65. So you can have, up to 65 go just to the mortgage, or you can have maybe 30 go to the mortgage and 20 go to the HOA and taxes. The point here being is there is a lot of assistance, again, a generational amount of assistance to help people who may be struggling here specifically with HOAs, but I wanted to highlight that the Texas HAF program covers mortgages, taxes, insurance, so like windstorm or homeowners, HOA, and utilities. So those 5 things. This is what the website looks like. It's real. There's that saying, not all that glitters is gold. Well, I'm telling you, this is real gold. It's out there to help people who have been impacted by COVID-19 and are facing the potential loss of their home. I encourage you to visit texashomowner.assistance.com if you need help. If you need help navigating the website, if you check out the homepage, there is a section titled Find Help, where you'll find a number of in-person centers that can help you navigate this process. And Lone Star Legal Aid is one of them. Now, we generally focus our time on, let's solve the legal problem so that you can just go through and upload your documents and get paid. But if we need to, we will do both for our clients to be able to, again, resolve the legal problem so that no one that comes to us loses their home. Now, I talked about this program being available for eligible Texans. So let's talk about the qualifications. I've provided them here. I'm going to read them because I know this can be difficult to read when you're looking at it on Zoom. Do I qualify? Texas homeowners may be eligible for assistance under the Texas HAF program if they meet the following criteria. You've fallen behind on one or more of the following payments. So mortgages, taxes, insurance, HOAs, and now add to that utilities. So that's check 1. You have an income, a household income at or below 100% of the area median income. Now, what does that mean? Like, give me a number. I can tell you with 100% confidence that a family of 4 that lives in the greater Houston area can earn up to $90,000. So this is before taxes are taken out, $90,000 gross and qualify for this program. So what does that look like? Husband and wife, or two partners, 2 kids, right? $90,000. You're going to qualify for the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. Maybe one makes 60 grand and one makes 20 grand, working part-time. That's 80. You're qualifying for the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. That number for a household of 4 is the same in Harris County, Galveston County, Montgomery County, Fort Bend County, and 6 other counties on the Gulf Coast area that Lone Star Legal Aid is serving. I'm confident in that $90,000, and it's the same for 1 person up to 4. When you start looking at area median income for households of 5, the number actually goes up. So you could be 1 person making $90,000 and qualify for this program. You could be 2 making $90,000 and qualify for this program. The more traditional nuclear family of, husband, wife, 2 kids, or 2 spouses and 2 kids is why I use the 4-person household as an example, because above 4 is where the number starts to go up. So you owe some debt on your house. You meet the income requirements. You own and occupy, so own and live in your home in Texas. You've experienced a qualified financial hardship after January 21st, 2020, such as lost income or increased expenses due to the pandemic. What does that mean? January 21st, 2020 is when the presidential disaster declaration for the pandemic was backdated to. So basically, the United States recognized COVID-19 as a global disaster, January 21st, 2020. And so if you've been impacted by it after that date, which I know everyone on this call has, if you bought a mask, it's that small of an impact, then you're eligible. So going back through the eligibility requirements, You owe some money on your house or utilities. You meet the income requirements. You own and live in your house. You've been impacted by COVID-19. The last one is additional program requirements will apply. And so that's more of the nitty gritty. That has not disqualified very many of my clients. So I would encourage you guys to not necessarily ignore that, but don't worry about it at this point. So all the applications are done online. So if you have trouble navigating the internet, I encourage you to contact the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. They have a phone number, which I'm going to go over in a moment. It's 1-833-651-3874. So I'm going to repeat that because I said it very quickly. 1-833-651-3874. And by calling that number and letting the people know that you need help applying, they will direct you to the nearest in-person intake center. That's just an office where you can complete the application, where they can basically take your paperwork and upload it for you to get over the hurdle that is the internet for some folks. Now, if you're comfortable using the internet and you got access to all your documents, you can scan them or take pictures of them and upload them. It's a very, very easy process to go through. So we've talked about HOA. We talked about the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. We talked about the powers of HOAs and how they work and how they're run. We talked about what common issues HOAs have and how one of those issues can be foreclosure. And then we talked about how, coming back to the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund, how it can be a tool to help you solve a problem that might exist with your homeowners association. So I've been speaking for about an hour and 17 minutes now. I'm happy to take any questions that may have been typed in the chat or that may have been sent to Nia or any of the other moderators at this time. And I hope y'all, I appreciate y'all for sticking with me so far.
Okay, question here in the chat. What legal resources are there in Houston or in Harris County for a homeowner in situations where the HOA refuses to repair items that are covered by the association?
So in those situations, I'll speculate, and if the person who asked the question wants to clarify, I'm going to speculate like maybe the sidewalk is in the declarations, it's the HOA's problem. The HOA's responsibility, and they're not fixing it, right? It's all torn up. It's all, just angled. There's potholes everywhere. It's not safe for kids and people to walk on. In that situation, what that is it's a contract. The declarations are a contract between the homeowner and the HOA. The HOA has breached the contract. Obviously I would try to, as the saying goes, catch more flies with honey than vinegar, try to talk to the board and say, hey, like, this is a problem. When are you going to fix it, and get a deadline? If it doesn't happen, then the legal resources would be more often than not a private attorney, because with Lone Star Legal Aid, we do exist to help people with HOA issues, but we have limited resources. So we try to focus our time on preventing the foreclosures, as opposed to suing HOAs to say, follow your contract. So in short answer to that is you're going to more than likely try to resolve it on your own. And if that doesn't work, you're probably going to have to hire a lawyer to sue your HOA for breaching the contract that they have with you as the homeowner.
I have a question. As it relates to the foreclosure, if the HOA fees are, in your case, $750, they force the sale of your house. Your house is worth $300,000. They sell the house. What happens does the HOA keep all the money from the sale of your house, or what happens to the difference?
That's a great question. So the equity, so the difference between what it's sold for and what it's worth, belongs to me as the homeowner. And so when the sale happens, these foreclosure auctions are conducted by sheriffs or constables. So the sheriff or constable takes possession of that money, and then he or she's going to deposit it with the court that ordered the foreclosure sale. Now, if you're in a condo and it was no judge or court involved, then the condo owner takes the condo association takes possession of it, but they have to give it to you as the homeowner. Now, do they always do it without asking? No, unfortunately not. But I just had a client contact me about 2 months ago, where his home was sold for about $3,000, and I'm sorry, he owed about $3,000 and his home was sold for about $240,000. And so that 237, in his case, it involved the judge. That 237 was deposited with the court. And then he contacted a private lawyer to help him get the money. And then he contacted Lone Star Legal Aid after he found out how much the private lawyer wanted to charge him to help him get the money. But the money belongs to him. That's your equity. No one else is entitled to the equity but you. I'd say anywhere in the United States, but definitely in Texas.
My
In
name
that
is,
same- I'm sorry, as a follow-up, Ms. Jacqueline, in that same scenario, what happens if there's a mortgage still owed on the property?
So more than likely your mortgage contract, so the either the deed of trust that you signed when you bought your house or the mortgage, the promissory note that you signed when you took out your mortgage says like if this house is ever condemned for, to expand the freeway, any money you got to give to us. Same thing applies with an HOA. If the HOA forecloses, any money you have to give to pay down your mortgage. Now, that is an obligation that is the homeowner's. I can tell you, I can count this many times I've seen a homeowner get thousands of dollars in their house foreclosed on and then turn it around and give it to their mortgage company. But that doesn't mean you're not required to do it per the terms of the contract. Does that answer your question?
So the money that's still deposited with the court that's the difference of what the HOA fee was, it still goes back to the homeowner, regardless if there's a mortgage, and then they're responsible for paying the mortgage after that?
Yes. Now, if the mortgage company finds out about the HOA's foreclosure, and there's a process by which the HOA has to tell them, hey, we're foreclosing, so they will find out. Most mortgage companies will, I've never actually seen a mortgage company pay the HOA, even though they have the right to do it. Most mortgage companies will contact the court to get the money out. Because they'll say, per the terms of this contract that the homeowner signed with us, this is our money.
Okay, all right, Ms. Jacqueline, go ahead and ask your question.
yes, I have two questions. Amir, on this Texas Homeowner Assistance Program, is there a time date on that? Because I've heard, I think it was back in March, that there was something about they were going to end this program, and I think it was this program in May of this year. Is there a time, is that date true, or am I just getting something confused here?
So it's not true. And what you may have heard is another state's program winding down. So when the American Rescue Plan Act created the Homeowners Assistance Fund program, it created basically 50 different programs for each one of the states. And I can tell you Texas is about halfway through its funding. And so it ain't going to end in May.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you like the program in Missouri and the program in Kansas, they're winding down. Now, I don't know if that's maybe what you heard, or like New York City paused theirs late last year, or New York State paused theirs late last year, and Florida is kind of pausing theirs right now. So
this is something I heard on TV, so I'm glad you clarified. This question is for Nia. Okay, for Nia, I live in a complex that, 2 years we've been trying to get a new board. We finally got that. And then we were suing, get records and things like that. Well, our association, everything is a disaster over here. Thank God we got a new board doing their diligent work. However, I want to know about the program here. I'm getting information for the board to distribute to the homeowners. Can I, once you send me the email, can I send that to maybe, to my home association, to people who are interested in, or is there only a limited number of people that can get this information?
No, ma'am. When I send it to you, you can forward it to whoever it is that you like, however many people that you want to get the information, the resources, the links for Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund, for Lone Star Legal Aid, a copy of this recording, all of that is going to be included in the email that I send out to everybody. So absolutely, please forward it to as many people that want to go back and view the presentation.
So they'll see everything that I saw today, they will see.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, of course, they won't be able to ask questions, but at least they know who they can contact.
Yes, ma'am. Also, let them know that we do these presentations, the foreclosure presentations, the fourth Thursday of every month. So next month will be just regular mortgage foreclosures and reverse mortgage foreclosures. The following month, property tax foreclosures, and then we'll do the HOA foreclosures again after that. So they're going to be on repeat. So if they want to come back and, you know, if they do have some questions and they all want to sit in specifically on HOA, they can sign up and come in and then ask their questions directly then if they like.
Okay, then I'll just, I have your information, so I'll pass this information on to the residents here and the board. Okay, thank you.
Can I share something real quick just to help? I pulled up the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund website, and as soon as my computer wants to follow me,
I did the same thing because I was going, I'm on that same page right there.
all right. So what this shows is this is the dashboard from the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. So if you go to the TexasHomeownersAssistance.com, you'll find both the dashboard and the application page. I'm looking at the dashboard. This says they've paid out 400 million. They started out with 693. Now, I'm a lawyer, not an accountant, but that sounds like they got $290 million left. I can tell you that very, very confidently because my staff and I work with this program every day, Monday through Friday. It ain't ending in May. Like there's no way they're going to get almost $300 million out the door next week, because that's next week is May. So I wanted to share this with y'all to say, don't just take my word for it. This is the information that the program itself is reporting publicly. It reports it to the powers that be that it has to answer to in the state of Texas, the state of Texas government. But then it also puts this out so that homeowners can see, like, okay, maybe it hasn't dried up. And there's a bunch of really useful information here. You can look at it just by county to see how much your friends and maybe neighbors have gotten out of the program. You can look at it by zip code. I really encourage y'all to check out the website.
Absolutely. And I will send that link out. So this dashboard right here is really, really good information to get out to people in your community, for your neighbors, because I think that you can even actually go so far as to do the zip codes. So if it's your particular neighborhood and you want to say, hey, you know, in our neighborhood, only 10 people have taken advantage of all of this money that's out there, when you know that many of your neighbors are still experiencing financial hardship and are facing foreclosure, they just don't know. So please make sure you guys get this information out to as many people as you possibly can.
Okay, and lastly, Nia, they can call your office. You know, some people may not be computer savvy. Is there any way they could communicate with somebody at your office?
To help them with going through the application, or
Well, I don't know, just maybe I guess. Well, we do have a few people on the complex that are not computer savvy, and so, you know, we some of the other neighbors help them, you know, get information to them that maybe come out in email. So I was just wondering, maybe maybe there's somebody at the office that could talk to them or help to them about this information, or maybe I'm just getting myself confusing. I don't know.
well, I mean, if it's information about the workshops and things of that nature, or trying to figure out how to watch the recording, then absolutely they can do that. If it's more specifically information about the Homeowners Assistance Fund, or trying to figure out where to go to apply for service and things of that nature, they'd probably be better off contacting Lone Star Legal Aid to have them work through that process, because more than likely they can probably financially qualify to get the attorney services for free versus me. I am not an attorney. So let me give that information to you. I am not an attorney. So if they're looking for that kind of advice or information, they cannot get that information from me. And I do apologize.
Well, at least our board will have this, and maybe the board can help them more. Maybe maybe that's the way we'll go. The board, you know, they could talk to the board members. And because I heard about this homeowners association, because we do have some concerns at our complex. So I'm glad that I watched this today. And so I'm gonna pass this on to the board and to other people on the property.
Thank you.
Another source of help navigating this program beyond just Lone Star, and I'm not saying don't call me, I'm here because I want you to. If you go to TexasHomeownersAssistance.com, like the people who are familiar with the internet, are comfortable using the internet, go to TexasHomeownersAssistance.com, click on Find Help, And there's a way you can just type in your zip code. Ms. Jacqueline, would you mind sharing your zip code with us? And that's fine. I can just use Lone Star Legal Aid zip code, which is 77002.
It's 77054.
Okay, 77054. You type that in, hit search, and it says what kind of, well, you can filter it by, do you just need help understanding it? So the application assistance. Do you need housing counseling? Which, Nia, correct me if I'm wrong. I think NRCDC, y'all do some housing counseling, right?
We do some housing counseling, and there are a few HUD certified housing counseling agencies that are throughout the city of Houston. Some of them do foreclosures. Not all housing counseling agencies do foreclosure though. So you'll have to specifically look at, ask them about their particular services.
Okay. So depending on what service you need, and if you want legal service, you can filter by that. If you just leave them all blank, this will tell you all the organizations and all their addresses and whether they're doing work in person, virtual, or by phone. And so like Disability Rights Texas is an organization that, people in your complex may be able to contact for help navigating this, understanding the program and navigating it as well, in addition to Lone Star Legal Aid.
Okay.
I didn't know that was there. That's good information too.
They've been adding a lot. We've been telling them to make it more customer friendly or homeowner friendly for a while.
Okay, so for someone that you said it's up to $60,000, right?
Yeah, so $65,000 is the most that the program will pay out. Yeah.
Okay, so if somebody over the last few years that, what if their mortgage is more, and plus their mortgage, plus their taxes, plus all of that is more than 65,000, what happens in that scenario?
So I've had a couple of clients like that. The Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund will not pay. They'll deny. What we have tried to do is, if your mortgage, maybe you owe more than $65,000, we try to get you a modification where it brings you current on your mortgage, and maybe the amount you were past due is rolled back into the loan, and then you just start paying a new loan. And then if you're still behind on your taxes and HOA, well, guess what? Now you're under the $65,000 cap, and maybe Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund is a tool that we can use to pay those debts. So we try to look at what's the most pressing, and whether or not we can qualify you for the Texas Homeowners Assistance Fund. But if Texas HAF isn't a tool, there are other options that a lawyer can help you navigate, or that a Department of Housing and Urban Development or HUD approved housing counselor can help you navigate as well.
I was just kind of trying to find a phone number. I'm going to find the link. The person that asked the question before about the other HOAs or legal resources, I'm going to email also the phone number or the link for Houston Lawyer Referral Service. You can contact them and let them know the kind of attorney that you're looking for what it is that your association is, or the community members or your residents are trying to do against your HOA association, and they can tell you which attorneys that you can contact.
Hi.
Ahead,
Yeah, I already did that, and they actually referred me to like several others. But the ones that I end up hiring, they charged me like $10,000, and they didn't do much. Like, I already talked to like 2 or 3, and amongst those, they took over like 10 grand. And I cannot be spending 10 grand on just visits with attorneys that are like, yeah, I can definitely, take your case. And then they'll sit on it for a while, and then they'll be like, oh, I just sent a letter, and that letter costs $10,000. Like, that's just ridiculous. The amount of attorneys that I've gone through that has just taken my money away, and nothing has been done. And that's why I'm like, I'm like running out of options.
I do know that I believe one of the other community partners in a month of service, maybe earlier this year or late last year, had a presentation about how the best way to go about hiring a lawyer. This is not, Ms. Tamaya, this is not to criticize what you've done. There are good lawyers and there are bad lawyers, just like there's good people and bad people, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And what I can say is, if you contact me offline, I can refer you directly to one law firm that, I know the lead lawyer there, and he's pretty trustworthy. I can't guarantee you what he'll offer to you, but I like him. I've worked with him. And I'm happy to, share my email address with you, and then, you can contact me offline. I can refer you there.
Yes, yeah, that'd be super helpful because I mean, it's not the money situation isn't really been the issue here. It's just been they don't want to do the work. Like, I go for like a consultation. I give them, a certain portion of the retainer, whether it's, 6,000, then they'll ask for another 4,000 later on. And then I tell them, I'm like, hey, what is the overall price, of this whole issue that I'm having? And they're like, oh, well, it's going to be 25,000. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then several months will pass by and they'll be like, you know what? I changed my mind. This case seems really in-depth. And I think I'm going to charge anywhere from like 50 to 100,000. Because it's not really worth my time, basically. So I've been juggling with people or firms like that for like a year now or so. And it's just very, very exhausting when you're paying your prepaid, you're prepaying your assessments on time. Because I pay them in like a year in advance because I don't like to have any, leftover debt, floating around. And they're still just, and I'm still not getting any kind of, results from the board, even though I try to talk to them. I try to send emails. I try to send letters. I even wrote on their Facebook post or their Facebook wall, and they still keep on ignoring. And they're still doing so many discrepancies that are so bad that, it's just too much to deal with.
I'm really sorry to hear that. And I'm glad you came today because that's one of the reasons, like your situation is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this presentation is because just like I mentioned earlier, that not all lawyers are great lawyers. Not all HOAs are run the best, and it can be very, very stressful. And I can hear it, trying to hire a lawyer, it's like trying to hire a plumber, right? Like you got to try and find the right one. And
Correct.
and when you're getting jerked around, it can be very, very frustrating. And when they're throwing around large sums of money, it can be scary. It can be that much. It's like, how am I supposed to solve this problem if you want, 50 grand or 25 grand?
And I did get your chat. I did speak to, I think it's Michelle. I think I can't remember. I'm so frustrated right now. I did speak to him actually, and he said he would not be able to help.
Okay.
Yeah. So I already spoke to him. I did see your chat message right now.
Okay.
And I spoke to him like I think a few years back regarding this, and he was just no help.
I'm kind of tapped out. I'm sorry. I really don't know who else. Most of the
is there some kind of either state representative that could reach out to regarding this, or someone that might be able to take interest? Because it's not only me that's complaining; it's several others, and in every board meeting that they have, they're like, okay, well, we don't have money to fix it, even though I'm getting charged like $600 a month, which is a high number to be paying each month. And so they just keep on saying, oh yeah, we don't have any funds, or we need to save, or all we have in reserves is just $1 million. We can't use that, so is there somewhere that I could reach out, or like an organization that you might know that is willing to kind of like either point me in the right direction regarding a person that might be able to help?
So a couple of things, hearing what you're saying, and I'm going to try to stay very general, is it sounds like you live in a condo with a condo owners association, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So chapters 81 and 82 of the Texas Property Code have all the rights and responsibilities for people who have a condo owners association. And I don't know the number off the top of my head, but one of the provisions in either chapter 81 or chapter 82 says that a condo owners association has to provide any owner who requests it access to their books, which include the accounting. So if you're being told we don't have the money, but you're paying your money on time, I would personally want to see where the money is going. And what I can tell you is, I can't say what I have done will work for you, but after Hurricane Harvey, I had a number of clients who lived on the southwest side of Houston, and their condos flooded, and the condo said, we don't have insurance. And so we asked for the books, and all of a sudden, each one of those condo owners got a $25,000 insurance check like 2 weeks later. So what's going to happen for you, but a lot of times people say one thing and then the books say something else. And when you shine a little sunshine on there, you can get a very quick resolution. As for your potential political solutions, like, hey, who can I contact? I don't know names immediately, because my advice, if I were in what I would do as a owner, is contact your city council person if you're in the city of Houston, and then also contact your state rep and state senator. Not like the people we send to DC, but the people we send to Austin.
Correct.
Each one of those levels has a constituent services director. I don't know if that's the name, but they exist to serve people like you and me, and they might be able to resolve it. I can't promise that they will, because
Okay.
most
No,
people,
that was my idea too, but I just wanted to make sure, since you kind of deal with this locally, if you had any other options. But yeah, that was my other thought.
so
But no.
You can,
One-
you can also try sitting on the board, sit in,
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, Deanna, you're gonna have to get a new board.
Oh, we've been having the same board for over like 30 plus years.
That's the problem. We at my complex, 2 years, we started working on this. The same problems you're having, I'm very familiar with it. I hate to say that I'm not the one that did the work. The person that's now one of the board members, she's been 2 years talking to everybody in this state. Nobody would help us. So we got, that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to get rid of the board. If they don't want, and you're right now, we're still trying to look at our books. We're still trying to get an order. We still, that's where we are. And our present board has only been there for about maybe 6 weeks. We're gonna have she's gonna have a meet, they're gonna have a meeting with us next week to tell us the bad news. How bad we have been managed over here. Now, you had a board that long. We had a board, maybe the board that we just got rid of, maybe 15 years. I'll just say 15 years. And it was a nightmare, but it's been a real nightmare here the last 2 years. But it takes a lot of work. Hey, we already been to court one time. We're going to court again with them. We didn't have to put out $10,000 yet, but I'm familiar with that number. That was, so whatever you have done, don't worry. Somebody else has done it out here. And, I'm starting to hear how some people taking over the, new board members, realizing their home association, everything, they're bankrupt. There's no money. They can't find any money. So this is like it's a common problem around here.
It is. It's very common. I did have one more question for, I believe, is it Amar? I'm sorry. I just came late to the meeting.
okay. Amir.
I'm sorry. I'm bad with names. I did have one more question though. Because I own partial the condo with my mom, because I had to add myself onto it because the HOA wouldn't speak to her. And so I had to add myself onto her condo. I have a separate house. If for any instance or any kind of scenario, the HOA was to sue her directly, or her and me together, basically, would my other house be liable for any kind of, let's say worst case scenario, the judge, they sue me for, whatever reason, hostility or whatever. And let's say the judge is like, okay, yeah, you owe them 10,000 or 20,000, whatever. Can they go after my other home or no?
So I'm going to sidestep your direct question, but I will try to answer it with legal information. And the reason I got to sidestep it is because, that you're asking for legal advice. And anybody that I provide legal advice to as an employee of Lone Star Legal Aid, I have to make sure you qualify, and there's a process for that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I can't answer your direct question, but what I can tell you is that under Texas law, if someone sues you and gets a judgment against you, and the judgment is for $10,000, $20,000, what do they do with that judgment? What is a judgment? It's a piece of paper that says you owe a certain amount of money. Now, what can they do to enforce that judgment? Most judgment creditors, meaning the person who has gotten the judgment, will record a copy of that judgment in the deed records. That's called an abstract of judgment. Abstract of judgments cannot be used to force the sale of a homestead. So if the other property that you're describing is your homestead, meaning you've got a homestead exemption on it, it's the place that you bought, it's where you live primarily, that abstract of judgment cannot be used to force you to sell your house. Alternatively, a judgment creditor can potentially try to garnish your bank accounts to seize, cash, or they could try to seek what's called a turnover receiver, which is like a third party who garnishes your bank accounts. So it's a long, drawn out process. There's a lot of I's that have to be dotted and T's that have to be crossed for a creditor to turn a judgment into money.
Okay.
I tell all of my clients, Texas is a very good state to live in if you owe people money, because we have a lot of legal protections, believe it or not. Long story short, the only things that can be used to force the sale of a homestead are generally mortgages. Like you bought the house, you gave them a lien on your mortgage. The Texas Constitution says they can foreclose. Property taxes, mechanics liens, HOAs, reverse mortgages, and home equity loans. Now, notice the judgment that I mentioned ain't one of those five. So they would not be allowed to force the sale of a homestead.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any other questions as it relates to homeownership foreclosure? Specifically, if you are a homeowner and you're facing any, just want to make sure I didn't skip anything in here that was sent directly to me. Amir, thank you so very much.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do it. And I'm glad you guys record this. I hope everyone who's attended tells people about this presentation and shares the video with them on social media. I hope y'all got value out of it. I enjoy these things beyond just like the dry throat, but it's fine. I enjoy speaking with y'all.
Okay. Is there a law that says that the bylaws or other association documents have to be kept in a particular location?
Well, they have to be most of the regulation for HOA say that all the books, bylaws, and records have to be maintained by the homeowners association. There's not a law that I know of off the top of my head that says it has to be kept at a certain place. But most HOAs, if you want to be a nonprofit corporation, if you want to be an HOA that's viewed as legitimate, you basically have to designate a place for the records to have been kept. So it's not going to be in Texas law that's going to say that it has to be at this location, but the HOA will have to specify where the records are kept. So going back to Ms. Tamayo's example, if she were to request the records in that situation, the HOA has to respond saying, this is where the records are. You can come get them at this address between these hours.
Okay. All right. I believe those were all of the questions that we had. There was nothing else in my email. I was just double checking that, and I don't see any questions on Facebook here. So I believe that concludes our presentation for today. Again, Amir, thank you very much for presenting such thorough information. This has been really, really helpful. Again, the foreclosure process in itself is always it's broad, but there's so many other intricate little things as it relates to foreclosure and the kinds of foreclosure that are out there. I know that I don't nearly have all the answers to all of this information. So thank you very much for kind of breaking this down as it relates to HOA. So we definitely want to invite you guys to come out and join us next month. Next month, we are just doing our regular mortgage foreclosures as it relates to being behind on your mortgage payment, reverse mortgage, and so on. That is the 4th. 1, 2, 3, 4. And May the 25th will be that presentation if you guys are interested in coming back and joining us next month. And you are very welcome. Thank you, Ms. Grace. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Ms. Jacqueline, for your questions. We appreciate you guys coming out. We see Lauren is here with us, and glad to have you all back supporting the A Month of Service presentations. Amir, you have a wonderful afternoon. You could go ahead and now get back to your legal work, because we know we pull you out at least once a month to do these presentations for us. So you guys can all get back to work. We appreciate all of your help, all of your support, all of your attendees, and we hope that you guys have a wonderful remainder of your afternoon, and we will see you again next time.
Take care.
All right.